Hello. Welcome back to another episode of Powerlifter to Bodybuilder with myself, Shane Story. So today is a push session with a little bit of a change. So the bench press is gone and I'm loving it. I'm actually delighted that I'm not doing a bench anymore because it was getting a little bit tough the last few weeks. It was probably one of the aspects of my training program that I was looking forward to the least. And after switching over to this exercise this week in this session, my training enjoyment has already increased substantially, as well as I actually feel like I'm getting a good chest workout. So with the bench, like as body fat goes down and leverages change, it becomes a lot tougher to kind of stabilize yourself on that bench. There's just less human on the bench, right? So with that as well, I was probably trying to clutch onto lows that I was pushing when I was a little bit heavier, a little bit too much, and pushing my limits a little bit too far. But I wasn't actually getting as much chest stimulus as I probably thought I was. I was actually probably getting a little bit more fatigue than I was meant to be getting. I should be getting more stimulation, right, to the muscle versus fatigue. So I've swapped it out to this, and I can already say that the actual stimulus I got in this session, in this exercise, better than any chest stimulation I got from bench over the entire of the prep so far. The stimulus is way more direct. The convergent arm path means I can get the arm a little bit more across the body and stimulate the chest a little bit more. And even though this session I did push myself, I walked out feeling less fried. Because like one thing you don't even really think about with the bench press, especially when you're training at like a powerlifter, is there's so much going on in regards to like, you know, your foot pressure, like the kind of amount of tightness you're trying to create through your lower back, through your arch, and then just the overall load that you're trying to lift, right? There's a lot more kind of fatigue that you're probably building, especially at these kind of lower ends of body fat compared to the amount of stimulus you're getting. So I rotated it out, and it just makes more sense for me at the moment at this stage in prep, like I'm 4.5 weeks out, to be picking exercises that have a better bang for my buck, that I'm going to get a better muscle stimulation with. So that was the reason for the change, as well as to take my focus away from a numbers perspective and put it onto the stimulus perspective. Okay, I want to be making sure that I'm fatiguing the muscle, not fatiguing lots of other areas, as well as, you know, making sure that I'm walking out of each session not absolutely hating it, or hating myself, or dreading the session going into it. All right. So after that, I have continued to do these chest flies. So my load on these since being in this gym has dropped a little bit, but then again, right, the exercise I just performed prior to it gave me more stimulus than I'd been getting in prior times during the session when I was in this gym. So it would make sense that the load has dropped somewhat. However, the load may have dropped, the external load, which I touched on in the last video, but the internal load is probably in around the same, probably getting in around the same level of mechanical tension on the muscle by using a lower load, because I've gotten more muscle stimulation from the prior exercise. So that's the first two exercises out of the way, and after that I'm on to some delts. So I am no longer doing 4 sets of shoulder pressing. One, because I didn't really find I was getting a huge amount from it, more fatigue versus stimulus, but as well I could probably do some more lateral delt work. So 2 sets of these here, so line cuffed lateral raises. I would usually use some daisy chains on these just to extend the trailing arm a little bit, because you'll probably see in the next clip of them the little balls on the end of the actual cables keep like bumping off each other in the bottom position. So in this actual exercise here, unlike a regular dumbbell lateral raise, the tension is highest in that bottom position, okay, because that's where the moment arm between the cable and the shoulder is closest to 90 degrees. So where I'm going to be most able to produce force from but it's also going to be the position where the muscle is getting challenged the most, right? So in that bottom position, I want to be able to ensure that my hands are able to come close together and somewhat lengthening the actual lateral delt. So one reason you don't actually get much shoulder dom is because you don't really get a huge amount of length into the shoulders at any one time. So if you bring that arm behind your body, for example, you're going to get the delt lengthened a little bit more, the side delt lengthened a little bit more. So I want that arm to come a little bit closer to the inside of my body to get a little bit more length and get a little bit more tension there. But just the balls in the end kind of limited that this week. So I'll have to ring my daisy chains for the next session. So then after that, I'm still doing some form of shoulder press to get some anterior delt work in here. So I'm doing this machine pin loaded shoulder press. And one thing that's really kind of stood out to me over the course of this prep is my overhead pressing sucks, which makes sense because I haven't been training it right. You don't get strong at something you're not training without training it. So definitely something I will need to work on going forward when I go into my off season, because my delts are probably a weak area, and many people have told me that and not taking it personally, it is what it is. I haven't trained delts near as much as I've trained chest over the last 3 years because of powerlifting. So I will look to incorporate some more overhead pressing for sure to get more kind of front delt work. You'll probably notice here on these I'm not extending my arms the whole way, I'm not locking out. One of those reasons being is as I get towards the top, my triceps just become a limiting factor here, right? I'm doing triceps at the end of the workout. Here I'm trying to load the delts. I want to ensure that I'm getting some load in that bottom position versus just locking out at the top and trying to fatigue my triceps, because that's going to impact the rest of the set. I called an audible on that last rep there. I probably could have pushed to lock it out. However, again, the whole point of my training at the moment now is stimulation and not annihilation, right? I'm trying to get a stimulus to the muscles versus push it too close to failure. At the moment, pushing things to failure for me is not a great idea, right? And I think most people can get very, very far in their training career, build a lot of muscle without ever needing to go to that failure point. Because when you push all the way to failure, to true failure, you increase fatigue substantially. You definitely get a huge amount of stimulus, but sometimes that level of fatigue you get is going to kind of supersede the stimulus you get. If you stay a rep or two short from failure, you're still going to get a decent amount of stimulus for muscle growth, versus if you push all the way to failure, you may just end up impacting your recovery over the course of the week, and then maybe in your next session it takes you it's a little bit harder for you to actually progress. So if you leave a rep or two in the tank on every single exercise, you'll still make phenomenal progress and be able to progress your training without necessarily needing to have without digging yourself into such a big recovery hole. So after all the shoulders, as you can see, I did some upper back T-bar rows. One of my favorite machines in this gym is that Watson T-bar row. It's just lovely. I love how you can adjust the handles on it. I love how the handles rotate, which can kind of align with how your hands will naturally want to move throughout the movement. After that, we have some machine pullovers. So I haven't used this machine in this gym before, so it took a little bit of playing around with it. I will definitely look in my next session to put something underneath my feet, because I felt quite unstable here and it felt very hard to lock myself into the actual machine itself and brace myself down. And I'll probably look to bring my daisy chains again and loop them around my waist to just keep me down, because that weight is trying to pull me up and I'm trying to keep myself down, right, to keep the stimulus on the lats. And one thing with this is as well, while I'm trying to keep my ribcage down, I'm trying to keep my arse into that seat and that weight is trying to pull me up, I found that when I was trying to keep my ribcage down, because that's going to allow me to keep as much kind of tension on the lats as possible, I felt like my core was just working super hard. So if I had something there to actually restrain me in, like a seatbelt or like a daisy chain looped around my waist and something under my feet so I could actually push my feet down into, I'd be a lot more stable and I would be getting probably a better stimulus. Because if I'm training this and I'm feeling way more in my abs than I am in my lats, we have an issue there, because I'm not doing an ab exercise, I'm doing a lat exercise. After that then, we finished off with some over the shoulder tricep extensions. So usually I would use a daisy chain here and a cuff, but again, I don't have my daisy chains. So one of the reasons I'll use the cuff is to essentially take out this grip element here, right? So even though the amount of grip strength I'm using here is relatively low, it's a lot easier if I have just something to loop around my hand and can just push into. Now, prior I have gotten my cuff and a carabiner and kind of looped it around the actual rope before, but I don't have my carabiners either. Emma, if you're watching or if you're listening, which I doubt you do, stop taking them out of my bag, and if you do, put them back. So this is probably one of my favorite tricep exercises. It really does hit the triceps in a different way, get a great contraction on them, and it's like doing a standing skull crusher, but you get better tension, I would say, through the entire portion of the range versus when you do it with a dumbbell. So even through that press, when I'm getting towards that shortened position, it starts to continually get harder versus with the likes of a skull crusher. Once you kind of get towards that like second half of the movement, it gets pretty easy, right? You can hold that position all day, whereas you can see here I'm really struggling to lock out this like on either side, really, right? So yeah, finish off with this exercise. So just 3 sets here, single arm. Start to see the splits coming in my triceps, which is pretty cool, separating the medial and the lateral head. So yeah, interesting times. Interesting seeing your body look like this as we get lower and lower in body fat. So this is my final rep. I think I gave it a little bit of assistance there. No harm with a little bit of assistance once you track it. So I would track that as a rep plus 1. Just to the note for next time that I've got a little bit of assistance. So this is how we're looking post-workout. So 82.4 this AM. So the last time I recorded this video, I was 81.2. So my weight actually the last 3 days has trended upwards. For reasons unknown, I think I'm a little bit run down. I have a little bit of an eye infection at the moment, which usually comes when I have experienced higher level of stress, and it would make sense considering I was volunteering all weekend abs. That is like so active around so many people, you know, out my usual environment, out my usual hermit environment, and just a little bit of kind of fatigue building up in the body, a little bit the diet fatigue potentially resulting in some suppression of my immune system and causing that eye infection. And as well, just adjusting to some of the foods I'm having at home. I think I could be having a little bit too much sodium now. I've changed out some hot sauces that I was using that have a little bit more sodium in them, so I just need to keep an eye on that. I'm running a few different like kind of days nutritionally this week with trying a peak, which I'll give you update on the weekend with the prep update. But despite the kind of increase in body weight, my physique is continuing to look pretty tight. Like obviously this is the first time I've seen myself in this light in ages, in 8 weeks since before Spain, and looking, obviously I'd hope, way better, look way leaner. It's great lighting, to be fair, and trying out some different things that I picked up from my posing coach Andrew when we had our posing session last week. So yes, I'm still getting posing coaching from Andrew. We have another session next week, and a big emphasis over the next 4 weeks is going to be on my routine. I doubt I'll show you my routine here. I'm going to save it for the stage, but we have a song picked, we are practicing it, we have our transitions, we have our poses that we're going to hit, and it's going to be cool to kind of actually get it nailed for me personally and see how it looks on stage. But I'm trying to get in a couple of rounds a day or every other day when it does come to just the mandatory posing, so the symmetry poses, the muscular poses, and as I do continue to lean out, they just continue to look better and better. So yeah, I'm very, very happy with how I'm looking at the moment. I'm very confident with how I am leading into the shows. I'm going to have a few different types of poses to learn as well, because I've entered into another show that's going to be in October, and I'll have to learn some different poses for that. But you know, you're going to get updated on that over the coming weeks. We have the WNBF to focus on first in 4.5 weeks time, NBFI the week after, and then you'll see what the following one is after that. So yeah, that's pretty much it. I'll leave you and love yous. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe, and I'll chat to you at the weekend.